Hello, my name is Aisha, and today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in 2025. I'm a very avid reader, so much so that a few years ago I began posting Instagram stories of little reviews when I finished a book, which I love. I love doing it, and I love hearing from other people about it, but the phone screen is just a little bit small, and I always find that I have so much more that I want to say about these books after I finish doing my little Instagram story. So I put the question to the class and I said, who would like to see a longer form video about all the books I read last year? And enough people said yes that now I have to do it. So here we are. Welcome to the video, and I can't wait. I read 34 books in 2025, which is okay. Like, I want to read more this year. My goal is a lot higher this year, but that's okay. But I should begin by saying that of that 34, 16 of them were the Pretty Little Liars book series. I could talk for another hour at least about this book series. I have so many thoughts, but I'm not going to do that. So I have written some notes down. I've condensed it into some notes so that I don't get off topic. But essentially what happened was I got a new Kindle last year. This is she. I love her. And when I logged in, I discovered all of these books that I already had in my library. It was like Christmas. And I had 10 of the 16 Pretty Little Liars books. And at the time I was rewatching the show. Of course. I looked at the books and they looked back at me and we kind of had a bit of a standoff, but I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. And I finished watching the show. And I was craving Pretty Little Liars. And I thought, why not? Why not? And I read the first 2 books in one day. For the record, these books are very easy to read. So if you want to get stuck into a book series that you can just fly through, I would definitely recommend this one. But let me get my notes so that I can speak coherently. What I will say is that compared to the show, the plot is airtight. The show has some of the most convoluted and ridiculous plot lines that I've ever watched in a show before. The plot holes are insane, whereas in the book, it is very simple, it's airtight, everything connects, and when the reveals happen, they explain everything prior. You would think that that would be the standard for a reveal. But no, if you watch the show, you would know that that's not the standard. It's also much darker and grittier than the show. When Allison goes missing, they're all about like 14 years old, I think. And already there are things that happen and some relationships that happen that are highly inappropriate and low-key illegal. But in the books, they are all kind of aged down when Allison goes missing. They're at the end of year 7 and they're all like 12, 13 years old. But all the things that Allison does before she goes missing in the show still happen in the books. So let me just consult my notes here, including who she is seeing. So that means, I'm not going to name any names, but 13-year-old Allison, like 12, 13 years old Allison, was seeing a boy in year 12. And Spencer kissed that same boy, a year 12 boy. So in the first 8 books, they're like 15, 16. And then there's a time jump in the second 8 books, they're 17, 18. And the whole series takes place only over high school, which personally works. I think works a lot better, because in the show, it's like they're in high school for an exorbitant amount of time. And then when they leave, there's like random time jump and it's been 5 years and like all the actors still look the same. I love it because like, oh my God, I'm going on a tangent. But I love it because like the only way they can think of to conceivably age up the characters besides giving Spencer bangs or whatever is that they get the actors to hold beer instead of coffee. They're like, they're older now. Also, A is so much scarier in the books, so much more unsettling than the show. Some of the stuff that A does in the show is ridiculous and like would be scary if it happened to you. Like Spencer gets locked in her sauna and Caleb gets locked in a kiln. The number of times these girls get locked in something and they're like, can't get out. But in the books, it feels so much more deliberate and targeted, everything bad that happens to them. It's not just for shock value, so it feels a lot more unsettling. Like A, at the end of the first 8 books, like A locks them in a house and like slips a note under the door explaining who they are, and then burns the house down. And it's like really, it's personal. I feel like that's what it is. It's like these targeted attacks are all very personal, whereas in the show a lot of the time it's like, how can we shock the audience with this random shit? Except for the dollhouse. I will say that. There's no dollhouse in the books. Also, so many more people die. Toby dies, Jenna dies, this random girl called Talia, is that her name? Mona dies. Just like so many people die or get like gravely injured. Noel Khan is like tortured and like kidnapped and kept in a barn, and like they find him like half dead. A is also so much more clever in the books, literally tricks the FBI. And also the girls get sent to actual prison, like ankle monitors, the whole thing, like they're on house arrest. Arya flees the country to try and escape. Emily fakes her own drowning to escape. Also to do some digging on who A is, but I digress. So A also, like their first iteration of A in the first like 2-3 books is the same person in the show, like the first A reveal in the show. No spoilers. But after that, A becomes the same person for the rest of the book series, and they have like one accomplice. So it's not like the show where there was like an A team and all these people were involved and like there was like one giant A, but it's not like that. I will say that a lot of the books get quite tedious because they all follow the same formula. They will begin the book and they'll be like, oh, this person is A, right? Based on little to no evidence. Sometimes all that person would need to do is look at them wrong and they're like, that's A. Then they'll treat that person like a criminal the whole book. Like, I mean, literally like a criminal. They're quite horrible to a lot of people. But I understand they're like traumatized and, you know, they're stressed all the time, blah, 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 whatever. Then the person does like one thing or says like one thing to one of them that could be deemed suspicious. A lot of the time what this is they'll receive an A message. They'll be like, oh, that's A. They'll look up at the person they think is A, and that person will just have their phone out or be like looking at them, and they'll be like, yeah. That's A. That's definitely A. And then panic ensues, and these girls do the stupidest things I've ever seen. The number of times they call actual law enforcement on a person when they have no evidence on them. Girls, get it together. And then A will basically like nearly kill that person. Or A will do something dramatic, and they'll be like, ooh, that person's not A, I guess. Obviously not. Whatever. A lot of the time, like, the story will move forward right at the end, but then they'll just do the same things and they won't really have any character development, whatever. Wow, I'm really being really succinct right now. I'm so glad I wrote notes down. However, I need to put my drink down for this one. Book 14 has one of, if not the best plot twists, like reveals that I have ever read or seen in any book or film or TV show prior to this. Like, it was so good. It was so well done. It was almost worth the tedium. Like the tedium, it almost made sense why all the books were written this way, why they were so slow, why I was getting so annoyed. It all like made sense for this one reveal at the end. Oh my god, I was reading it, and I had to like put my Kindle down and just stare at the ceiling. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I was shocked. It was so well done. Oh, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Yeah, it's almost worth reading the whole series just to get to that reveal. Book 14. You did it. I should also say these books are written by Sara Shepard. I literally forgot to credit the author. Sara Shepard, you really did that in book 14. And then book 15 and 16 could have been one book. Like, they didn't need to be spread out over two, but they got really dark before it all like resolved. It was really hard to read sometimes. But unfortunately, I would recommend this book series, which is not what I was expecting when I first started reading it. I thought it would just be like, ugh, whatever, silly, goofy fun. But I like literally would recommend it. It's super easy to read. Like, it's dark, it's horrifying at times, and it's like really backwards sometimes. It's ridiculous and highly problematic. But if you can look past that, if you can just go along for the ride, it's like kind of good. They're definitely aimed at teen girls. Some of the like the way that it's written, the vocabulary, the teen slang, oh my god. It's a pretty solid story and it's pretty easy to follow. Like I said, I read the first two in one day. Especially if you've seen the show, I would definitely recommend returning to the source material to kind of see like what it could have been, what the show could have been. So yes, I read all 16 Pretty Little Liars books by Sara Shepard. Great, now we've got that out of the way. Let's get into the other books I read this year. Coffee break. I read The Wise Man's Fear by Pasek Rothfuss. So it's book 2 of what is supposed to be a trilogy. And does book 3 exist yet? No, it does not. My friend recommended this book series to me. Yep, he was right. They're really good. He was right. And now I can join him in his frustration that there is no book 3. Because after I finished reading this, I was like, you're joking. Like, I have to know what happens. I would say like the world building and the fantasy storytelling is just top notch. It's so good. Something interesting that this author does is that we don't really get every insight at every point in the novel into the protagonist's inner thoughts. So something will happen and we'll feel like, oh, he's trapped, like he's caught, there's no way out of this. And then he'll do something that tricks everyone, including us, because he'd figured something out that we weren't privy to. It was actually really interesting to read sometimes because it made it more interesting. It made you like pay attention more, and it made him a more dynamic and interesting narrator. There is a small lull, like in the middle / like the later half of this book where, I found it, where like basically he travels to this kind of like fairy realm and he just like lives with this fae woman for like what feels like an eternity. And basically they just have sex for like how many chapters, like it's fucking ridiculous. The point is to kind of showcase how powerful he is because like no man has ever escaped her before. And also he does get some information when he's in the realm about like his main mission, his goal as a character. So that's good. We're just there for so long. But I mean, that would kind of be my only criticism really. It's pretty solid. I would recommend, you will be frustrated by the fact there are only 2 books in this trilogy, but you know, they're very well written, so it's kind of worth it. I also wrote down a quote from this book and it's just so lovely. Let me say this. It was worth the whole awful, irritating time spent searching the archives just to watch that moment happen. It was worth blood and the fear of death to see her fall in love with him, just a little. Just the first faint breath of love. So light she probably didn't notice it herself. It wasn't dramatic, like some bolt of lightning with a crack of thunder following. It was more like when flint strikes steel and the spark fades almost too fast for you to see. But still, you know it's there, down where you can't see, kindling. So yes, would recommend that one. Next up, we have Wicked. I think the full title is Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West by Gregory Maguire. Now, wonder why I wanted to read the book of this one. If you enjoyed the show and or the film, I actually wouldn't recommend this book. It's so different in pretty much every single aspect. I wonder whether I would enjoy it if I didn't know the show, like if the show didn't exist or if I didn't know it. It was just really hard to read at times, like really just depressing and dark. Because I also wouldn't even say that Elphaba and Galinda's friendship is a central part of the story. Like it's part of it. But I wouldn't, it's not what sticks out to me about this book. Like it's barely in it, I don't think, which is like funny because in the show, that's like the central core part and it's beautiful and we love it. So yeah, it was just interesting. And also Fiyero, it's like the polar opposite in the book. Like there's none of this, what's the most swankified place in town? Like none of that person. There's no dancing through life in this book, that's for sure. I think like it makes Oz a lot scarier. Like for the same reasons that Oz is corrupt in the show, but the show definitely sugarcoats it a lot and like makes it kind of more subtle, whereas this is like, this place sucks, it's terrible for all these reasons, and everyone is terrible. It makes for a very tough read. I don't know. It's a classic piece of literature, so read it if you want. And I do have a quote from this one too, because there was just one thing where I was like, oh, that's just so lovely. They didn't know it was the last time they would all be together, or they might have lingered. Next, we have Dear Evan Hansen. This is the first time I've read a book that was written after like a film or a show came out. So this is actually based on the show. This is the novel version of the show. It's written by Val Emmich, Stephen Levinson, and then Benj, Pasek and Justin Paul also. I've only ever listened to the soundtrack. I haven't actually seen the show live, so it was a lot of the story that I didn't know. So I thought it was interesting. Like, I enjoyed it. It's an easy read, especially if you love musical theatre. Would recommend. It was a lot of fun. No, it wasn't. It wasn't fun. It was highly emotional. I love reading it and like, when do the songs come in? So that was the next one. My next book is called When the World Tips Over by Jandy Nelson. Now, Jandy Nelson is the author of my favourite book, which we'll get to. It's in the pile. This book, oh my god. I would recommend this every day for the rest of my life. This is, like, I know I will be rereading this book. This book will be coming back. Her writing flows so well. You'd get through it without even realising. I literally could not put this book down. I read it in about a day and a half. She builds such a detailed and intricate world with such interesting characters. Whenever I finish reading one of her books, I always miss the characters. Like, I want to go back and read it again instantly. I think I closed this book and went, I want to go back to the beginning, because you just want to be part of the world constantly. Also, the way she writes, she like slowly reveals how each character in this book, how they're all linked together, and it's never in the way you'd expect. It's just so good. It's just so good. And she has such a visual and artistic and poetic writing style. It's almost like magical realism sometimes. It's right up my alley, but if you love that sort of writing, definitely read this one. It's so good. All right, this next book, I feel like a lot of people read. But like, you already know, like, why I was sobbing from the very beginning. That reaping ceremony, the bit that got me was in the reaping, at the end of the reaping, Maisie, when she says goodbye to Merrily and they just like, wait, where is it? Oh yeah, because they have to reshoot everything. Oh my god. Wait, literally, where is it? Oh my god, like, I literally I'm about to cry. Like, when Maisie and Merrily say goodbye to each other, I was sobbing the entire way through this book. This was just so much more disturbing than like anything I could have anticipated. Like, anything. Just the Capitol's cruelty, I think, was really heightened in this one. I mean, the arena was so creative. Like, Suzanne, you nailed it. Like, that arena, I was like, I don't know how they are gonna convey some of the deaths in that arena. They were horrific. They're gonna have to like rate it as like an 18+ film, because that I just don't know how they're gonna do it. I don't know how I'm gonna physically sit through that whole film. This has been the only book, maybe ever, where I have missed my stop on the train because I couldn't stop reading. So that's probably one of the highest recommendations I can give it. But yeah, if you haven't read it, especially if you love the Hunger Games, like... Okay, the next book that I read was on my Kindle. It was called Girls That Invest by Simran Kaur. I think I'm saying her name right. I think it might now be called Friends That Invest. We're taking a little break. We're going into non-fiction for a second right now. I really enjoyed reading this book and I was taking notes, and I think I probably will go back and reread it and revisit. I was really glad I was taking notes so that I can like retain some of the things that I read. Everything was explained in a very simplistic and helpful way to kind of help you gain a basic understanding of how investing works, how to, you know, start making smart decisions for your money, how to think about your future and that far ahead and like what that would look like. It was written for people who specifically for people who don't have that understanding. I really would recommend this book, especially if you want to get into investing and you don't know where to start, or you already are investing but you kind of feel a little bit apprehensive about it because you don't know as much about it as you would like to. Definitely would recommend this book. It clears up so much about it. She also has a podcast, and I listened to her on Grace Beverley's podcast, Working Hard, and she is just as succinct and coherent speaking out loud as well. What? Clearly I'm not. So her podcast is a really accessible way to gain a lot of this information as well. All right, the next book on my pile is one that we are no stranger to. I read this one with my colleague. We haven't read past book 1, so I feel like the rest are in my future, But for now, I've just read this one. It was time. Yo, this was so much darker than I thought it was gonna be. Like, especially at the end. When she went under the mountain or whatever the fuck, like, that was insane. Oh, the try was a tournament of it all. Yeah, I feel like I should probably keep reading this series. Probably. This is definitely one for the girls. And when I was reading it on the train, and then a girl came up to me and she was listening to it, like in an audiobook, and we were like, obviously would recommend. I feel like most people have read it already, but like if you love romance and fantasy, like it's pretty hard sometimes. But it does get really like intensely dark randomly, so just be prepared for that. The next one I read was also on my Kindle, and this was one that I also read with my colleague, and we definitely needed something a lot more like lighthearted and fun after the kind of like intense distress that was A Court of Thorns and Roses. So we read Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. Just so cute. Just a classic rom-com, you know, like we all know where it's headed, but it's so much fun. It's this guy and he's famous, I think, if I'm remembering this correctly. He's famous, but he's got such a bad reputation. And so he needs to find a boyfriend who's like really stable and calm and like has his life together to kind of give him a better reputation. So you've got your classic fake dating to real dating, enemies to lovers, rom-com vibes. Like really easy to read. If you're looking for a lighthearted read that's gonna make you giggle and kick your feet, kick your little toes, then I would definitely recommend Boyfriend Material. Alright, to take a completely dramatic turn in a different direction, What Trump's Second Term Means for Australia by Bruce Wolpe. Now, he used to be, let me get this right, he worked with the Democrats in the US Congress during President Barack Obama's first term, was the senior advisor to Prime Minister Julia Gillard and chief of staff to the former Prime Minister. So he has worked with the US, in the US and Australian politics, and basically we're all fucked globally, on a global scale. I would say we're all fucked. Something that was kind of nice to read was like Australians, like we have strong enough systems put in place. So things like compulsory preferential voting, the Australian Electoral Commission, and also we have like strong third party and independent candidates. So our democracy is solid, if that makes sense. Like it would be much harder than it would be in the States to fall into like a dictatorship or a totalitarian state. So that was nice to read. Socially, we will all hurt. Trump's being re-elected does empower a certain demographic of people that I think are harmful to wider society, e.g. Your Body, My Choice. That started appearing very soon after this election was called, which is very scary because that will affect Australian culture and our landscape because we're not perfect and the fight continues. That's just, the fight continues. I also read this in the first half of 2025 and now at this point in time, at the beginning of 2026, I think we're seeing a much clearer image of what his presidency does mean. Some of the images and videos that are coming out are horrific. I can't believe that this is happening, even though I can. Like, I'm not surprised, but it's ridiculous. And he released this very, very soon after. Well, he released it before the election. So, like, a lot of it was like, you know, if he wins again. And then he added some bits after he did get re-elected to be like, well. But it was scary because, like, when I was reading it in the first half of 2025, a lot of the predictions had already come true. So, like, if you're interested in politics, especially US politics and how that might impact us here, read that. Now, let's move along to something completely different. This is called Her Fidelity, written by Catherine Pollock. I picked it up in a bookstore because it is Australian and it had a fun cover. And it's about music, so I was like, yeah, can't wait to read. Sadly, I don't know if this was the book for me. I did not enjoy this. It was just like very... I'm not like other girls because I like indie music, not that drivel pop music, and therefore I'm better than them. Like, it was very that. And don't get me wrong, some of us have been there before. I don't know, it was just like really tiresome, that trope. I just didn't enjoy that. Like separating herself from all her female friends because she's like, I'm just better than everyone. And then like trying to fit in with the boys club. Like she has her like OMG, like, I am like other girls. And there's no subtlety about that. I'm pretty sure in the book it's literally written, I am like other girls. But then after that, it becomes like boys versus girls in like a very, very surface level way. Could have been deeper, could have been more effective. But hey, like Australian, easy to read. Now we take a bit of a dip towards some classic literature, The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. I love a novel that like follows a group of people around as they're traveling. I love it. But man, this was depressing and dark. It was an interesting part of American history that I didn't really know that much about. So like that was good to read. Strong racist undertones, just FYI. So this family just gets whacked with like hardship after hardship over and over and over again. There's like no reprieve, or there's like a little bit of a reprieve and then suddenly it's like back again, but like really well written. But then it just ends like mid-crisis. So I guess you just assume that like that's their life and they've just got to keep going along. But the ending also has this really poignant moment to like highlight the strength of just human kindness and the kindness of strangers. I would say that's like one of the things that stands out the most, is that all of these people are in this horrific circumstance, but they're in it together. And the kindness that these people show to strangers, to other people on the road, they just treat everyone like family and they're really hospitable. So that was really nice to read. I can see why it's a classic, and it's a classic of American literature in particular. Yeah, if you hadn't read it, like, I would recommend. But fun fact, at the beginning of Lady Bird, directed by Greta Gerwig, they are listening to the end of this book. So that was kind of fun, because when I got to the very end, I was like, I know this next line. I do have some quotes from this one. Firstly, just Jode's eyes were inward on his memory. What a beautiful line. Thank you, John. And then, and the great owners who must lose their land in an upheaval, the great owners with access to history, with eyes to read history and to know the great fact. When property accumulates in too few hands, it is taken away. And that companion fact, when a majority of the people are hungry and cold, they will take by force what they need. And the little screaming fact that sounds through all history, repression works only to strengthen and knit the repressed. Next up that I read was this one. If you know me, you've heard me talk about this one before. This is my favourite book ever. Jandy Nelson from When the World Tips Over. This is a life-changing book, I think. Like, oh my god, even just thinking about these characters, like I just want to start reading it. Jude and her twin Noah are close until a tragedy drives them apart. Now they are barely speaking and both falling for boys they can't have. Love's complicated. And it is complicated. Oh my god. I read it at least once a year and it's very touching and emotional. The way it's written is like, because there are the twins, Jude and Noah. So Noah's sections are written when they're 13 and a half, 14 years old. And then Jude's are when they're like 16. So you're kind of reading the end of Noah's sections in Jude's, but everything ties together. It's similar to her other novel, like you kind of realize how all of these worlds and characters are connected to each other. Oh my god, it's just so good. It's about twins, family dynamics, sibling dynamics, friendships, relationships, crushes. It's very much about art and creativity, and again the writing style is very artistic and visual and just magical realism. I could not recommend this book more. I recommend this book to everybody. Give it a read. So easy to read, so easy to get through. The only thing I'd flag is like it's written for teenagers, so again like some of the language and the vocabulary is definitely aimed at that demographic, but who cares? Alright, and then taking a complete 180, the next book I read, which was on my Kindle, is called The Shards by Bret Easton Ellis, and he's the guy who wrote American Psycho, so you know you're in for something absolutely horrendous, and it was horrendous. It was absolutely horrendous. I think I'm gonna have to read verbatim just like what my Instagram story said. It sums it up pretty well. So this was an incredibly graphic, horrifying, disturbing novel with an undercurrent of extreme violence and tension throughout the whole thing, and then there isn't a satisfying conclusion. It leaves a lot open to interpretation because I think the narrator was super unreliable. It was interesting because you realize slowly throughout the book that he might be unreliable. It wasn't like immediately from the get-go, and then it just makes you question every single thing that's happened. So like really, really well written. It follows a group of teenagers in their final year of high school in LA, and they all come from super wealthy families, but their lives are just like super hollow and empty. Literally all these teenagers do is they just like take drugs, they have sex, they go to Hollywood parties, they drive around. The number of times this guy's just driving around, and they go to the movies. That was the part that I was like, that might be nice. Like, he literally would start the week looking at the newspaper and see when all the show times would be, and then just pick which ones he wanted to go to. That might be a nice life. And then there also happened to be these like really gruesome and graphic murders and like stalking things that were happening. Definitely brought the mood right down. The protagonist suspects this new classmate who arrives. The way the book is written is he's saying like everything horrible that happened, like it all began when this new boy joined their class. But by the end of the book, it kind of like makes you question whether that new classmate was actually just like fine, and he was just trying to convince us that this classmate was like full on evil. There is a bit of a question, like, was the narrator actually the killer? I don't think so, but something happens and you're like, wait, oh my god, we can't trust anything that this protagonist has said, and then it makes you question the whole book. It was really hard to get through because it was so violent, but like a story well told and like really interesting. Then the next book that I read was called Dropping the Mask. It's Noni Hazelhurst's memoir, and it was so nice. Like, I'd recommend any memoir written by an actor or performer to any of my actor friends, just because it's just so nice sometimes to like read how they got their start in their career and the steps that they took to get where they are now. Obviously everyone's foray into the industry is completely different, so it's just nice to read from someone else's perspectives and like their setbacks and their triumphs and where they put their time and energy, especially because Noni Hazelhurst is Australian, so it's centered around the Australian industry. So I thought it was really, really interesting to read, and to read how much the industry has changed over the course of her career. I didn't know much about Noni Hazelhurst before I started reading, but what a woman. She's so brilliant and inspiring. And I think I actually did write down a quote from the book. This fight for equality, which at its heart is really a plea for compassion and empathy, needs to be waged on so many fronts. I thought that was really nice. Now, we have the 3 books that I read over Christmas. First, I read Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I think I'm saying that right. This book was written kind of aroundish the same time as 1984, so people often draw the comparison between the two. While 1984 is definitely this very dark, dystopian, horrendous nightmare of a book, the society in Brave New World is presented as a utopia, like a utopian society, which is really interesting to read, like how disturbing that is in a different way. It's inspired by American consumerism. I think in the foreword it talks about how the author visited the US and was just like horrified by what he saw, so it kind of inspired this sort of story. Everyone has been prepared for their social class since birth. Like, they've got it down to a science because everyone's born from like a test tube. No one's naturally born. The way that they prepare these test tubes and what they like put in it is like different for every class system. So literally once you're born, you're already born to fit into a specific class, and then the way you're raised, the messaging you're exposed to, brainwashed. All these people think that they are super happy and they live these perfect lives and they're exactly where they need to be because they don't know that there's anything more, and they don't have the capacity to conceive of anything more. They're just happy where they are. When they're younger, like, recordings will be played for these groups when they're sleeping that's like, I'm so grateful I'm in this particular group and that I'm not in this group. Of course, like, you know, one person begins to question it. Classic. There's no humanity. There's none of the stuff that makes humans humans. Everyone's just living in this perfectly controlled society, and what that means is that like one person or a group of people can be in complete control and no one questions it. So that's what makes it more dystopian. I will say this is written in like the 1930s. This is heavily racist. Part of the whole thing is you can travel on vacation to like the outlands, like past the fence to the savage, I'm doing quotes, world. So I'll let you figure out what that means to an author writing in like the 1930s. But interesting to read from a cultural standpoint. All right. We're almost done. We almost made it through. Next, I read She Speaks, What Shakespeare's Women Might Have Said by Harriet Walter. My mum and I saw Harriet Walter at the Sydney Writers' Festival, and it was the most amazing, incredible, wonderful thing ever. I have loved her for so many years as an actor. Seeing her in person was overwhelming. But essentially, this is one of the best things that I've ever read in my entire life. So she took Shakespeare's female characters and wrote like soliloquies and scenes for them to actually give them a strong voice and perspective in the story, and also change the story. Like some of them, it's different. So my favorite was Ophelia, because she wrote this soliloquy. Basically, Ophelia didn't die, like feigned madness so that she could escape Hamlet and her family and everything, faked her own death, and then went and joined a convent and was just really happy. I think it's Hamlet that says to her, like, get thee to a nunnery. So she's like, okay, well, I did his one instruction. It's so good. Like, it's really cleverly done. And, like, Harriet has so much respect and understanding of Shakespeare. Like, it's remarkable, her understanding of Shakespeare and how he wrote. So it's all very respectful, what she's writing, and it's all within the same, like, tone and style and vocabulary. It's so well done. It's brilliant. The way she uses the Shakespearean text is just incredible. So I would definitely recommend it, especially if you love Shakespeare, you love theatre. It's fantastic. It's really cool to read. We also have Play It As It Lays by Joan Didion. I hope I'm saying that name right. This was my first time reading Joan Didion, and it will not be my last. What an incredible writer. I think I already knew she would be incredible, but now I know firsthand. We're back like where we were before. We've got an apathetic character living in LA, classic, but this time it's not a murder mystery. There's no like intense, there is some graphic violence and there's a very graphic description of an abortion, but like it's not a murder mystery, but it's just such an uncomfortable read, like from the beginning. It's very, very hard to get through, but it's just so well written. I saw a Goodreads review that read, I did not enjoy a single moment of reading this book, but I like it. That's kind of how I felt about it, because you just kind of feel like this helpless observer that's watching her make these decisions, and like you just want to help but you can't. Just such interesting commentary on Hollywood and life in LA in the late 1960s, especially as a woman and everything that comes with. So I would definitely recommend, but what the fuck, some of this I can't. Anyway, and lastly, which was also on my Kindle, another discovery, because I had all 3 Hunger Games books. So I read the first one at the end of 2025. Technically the second 2 were my first 2 books of this year, but we're all just gonna lump it into one. No one say anything about that. I'm assuming that most of us have read the books. This was a reread for me as well, just in case you haven't. It's like the best. It's so good and you need to read it. There was so much in the books, like so much lore, so much of the story and about the characters that I had forgotten, because I just keep rewatching the movies, and you know, obviously the films can't add everything in. Side note, how did they make 2 Mockingjay films and still get it so wrong? But rereading the books really did re-emphasize how perfect Catching Fire is. It's a perfect film. And also how perfect Sam Claflin is as Finnick. Finnick, don't. Oh god. And the last line of that book, which is the last line of the films as well, is just the perfect. This is particularly difficult to read in like 2025, 2026 for some obvious reasons, but that's why I think it's more important than ever that we return to these like young adult dystopian novels. Honestly, we have to go back and reread them again, because we've been preparing for some things that are happening in our world now since we were 13. So go back and reread, please. If for some reason you haven't read these books, I would highly, highly recommend. Right. That brings us to the end. Those were all the books I read in 2025, plus Catching Fire and Mockingjay. If you watched this far, thank you so much for watching. This was so much fun for me. I love talking about books. I love reading books. So this whole thing, like, this was just so much fun. I really enjoyed it. I post about all the books that I read as I finish them on my Instagram story. I need to post about one today. But yep. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will be talking about books more and more soon. I hope that recorded properly. Goodbye.